Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Torchwood Series 2 episode, From Out of the Rain, written by Peter J. Hammond and is directed by Jonathan Fox Bassnett. I'm sorry if I pronounced the last name wrong of that. Now, this is what I find really interesting because Peter J. Hamilton, he previously wrote for the last series, he wrote the story Small Worlds, a very unpopular story about fairies, and before that he had actually written an unproduced story for the Sixth Doctor. And you would have thought by this point that he might not want to try into the series again. So I don't know why he returned for this. Maybe he is just generally a massive Doctor Who Torchwood fan and he just wanted to produce another story, or whether he felt like this was, or maybe someone pushed him to continue something that we learned with Helen Reiner, that some of the producers like Russell T Davies would egg on people even if their stories weren't praised by the fan base, because just ignore the critics, just I trust in you. So there's that. So I don't know if that kind of happened with here. Of course, Russell T Davies was a producer of Torchwood, but main to the point was Chris Chibnall, who was a producer of this. So I don't know who to thank for him to return, because this story is a massive improvement from Small Worlds. It's essentially the same kind of story. In fact, very unusual for Torchwood, this story has no violence, no swearing as far as I can concerned, and the adult aspect of this story comes from its very grim, very creepy atmosphere. This is how you should be running Torchwood. By dark atmosphere, not overly sexy and not overly violent and not overly just swear words, just have this creepy, grim atmosphere. Now, also I just want to point out as well that I might be a little bit biased on this story. This is the first time I've watched this story. The first time I watched this story is now for this marathon, but it deals with a lot of stuff that I'm interested in, like old circuses back in the 1920s and old silence film stock, and that plays into the narrative and this idea. And I will say that these concepts might not be for everybody, but they are some of my big interests. And so I will fully just come out that this story is tackling an itch that I have been having. The type of story this tells is a type of story which I am fascinated in. So whether my enjoyment of this story is a genuine appreciation for the writing, or whether it's because I'm just completely biased and just can't see over the fact that this story just has a lot of elements which I've always liked seeing, is something I think you should know about this vlog, because this isn't a review, this is a vlog. There is a difference. A vlog is just me discussing it, just talking about my opinions on it, even if it's biased or as anything. But a review is deep down and analysing it. And so if you are somebody who's looking for me to analyse this in that regard, then you might be disappointed here. This is going to be me ranting about how great I enjoyed this story, because this is a lot of fun. The main premise of the story is when we start off with this kid who is basically he's making a collection of films. He's basically splicing old film reels together of the old town that there used to be around here, and his parents are opening this expedition showing all these clips for viewing audiences, and something just like this. There's something passionate about it, But for somehow, there seems to be some stock footage of circuses there, as this creepy character seems to be taunting the character to this boy to come forth into the camera. And this was something he didn't suspect to see. There was none of this footage that he spliced together, nothing he saw. It was only until after he started playing it did these things start to appear. And when the film reel finishes, some of the footage still actually appears as we see this entity basically calling out to him. And that is essentially just like the main premise. That's the pre-credit sequence, is just there's an entity that lives inside this old film stock, and he's about to be let loose in Torchwood. This is one of the few occasions in which Torchwood deals with something a bit more supernatural, something a bit more akin to a classic horror film, like a vampire or a mummy or a ghost. Essentially, this is Ghost here. And what exactly it is, we'll talk about it more later down in the episode. But the atmosphere in this story is immense. But atmosphere itself isn't what this story's got going for it. It just has this great appreciation for the film and for this passion of collecting old films and all of these old film cans, like a movie historian. Yanto actually takes Reese and Gwen. Now, I was kind of surprised to see Gwen here. The last episode, Something Borrowed, kind of implies that Gwen wasn't going to appear in an episode or so. So this story clearly takes place a while after that episode, after Gwen has had her honeymoon. And so they go in to investigate this this old cinema, which Yanto actually talks about how he loves the cinema. Him and his father used to take him to the cinema, the Electro, when they were kids. I loved like the old posters in the background. Again, this is something which is something a bit more like my taste, but I love like the old 1920s movie posters in the background and this atmosphere and this production, and I just absolutely just enjoy it. And so Yanto, Gwen, and Owen are watching these films, and the boy, he's trying to explain to his parents that like something freaky kind of happened, but the father's just like, I don't care, you were supposed to be on time, now get your ass up to the projector room and put the film stock in. And so he puts the film stock in, and they start watching this silent movie of... Sorry, something banged just my window then. I don't know if it caught that on the camera then. They start showing old clips of the streets. However, suddenly it starts turning into this image of the carnival as the son character's like, oh God, not again. And he kind of gets petrified. He starts panicking as if this kind of footage is kind of haunted in a way. It's possessed in a way. And the tortured team are kind of confused by this, but Owen and Gwen are kind of bored by this, and they're thinking about just leaving, as it seemingly looks like the same clips are being repeated. However, Yanto notices someone's in the film stock, Jack, and appears that he is part of this carnival, and it looks like he keeps putting a gun to his head, and he keeps shooting. But it's more like a carnival thing, like he's one of the freaks in the freak show, and that is kind of like what? Back in the Torchwood base, Jack starts hearing old-fashioned music, old-fashioned sounds playing. Playing in the Torchwood hub, something which is sort of connecting him. I can't remember what leads the Torchwood team. Oh, there was a spike of rift energy, and all of a sudden, two characters that were in the silent films the leader and this woman in these really old-fashioned 1920s carnival costumes. They start going around Cardiff and just being generally really creepy, but it's never it's just over the top enough where it's creepy and atmospheric and it makes you see the effort, but it's never over the top that it becomes silly and ridiculous. And I think the main part of this, the main reason why this element, this villain works so well, apart from a few other things which we'll talk about in a bit, is the performance. The main villain of the story, the leader, known only as the Ghost Maker, is played by none other than by Julian Bleach, who this is actually his first appearance in the Doctor Who canon. Julian Bleach is an actor mostly known for his villainous roles. In fact, he would be one of the few recurrent actors that would play a prominent villain in all Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, and Doctor Who. He just has this presence about him, and he can get something about his performance, his voice, his demeanour, the way he has these big googly eyes is something that it's something he uses to his strengths, but it's never revealed, shows off his weaknesses. It's just a bloody-tastic performance, and this is what makes his story particularly so great, is this atmosphere, this really unnatural emotions with this character and this his lady. I can't remember what the lady's called. I believe her name is Lucy. The closest thing to a mermaid, one character states, and they're creepy. They kind of touch people's faces, and they suck people's last breath and turning them into this state where their hearts are beating, but they have no breath, and their lips are completely dried out. And the torture team find this and are freaked out with this, and this time energy is also being somehow linked to the theatre and the release of these characters from the film. So torture team go in to investigate, and there's one scene here I really want to give a shout out. The scene in which Owen, he's basically just looking in the cinema room, and Jack talks to him, and Owen just talks about how basically being stuck in this film, being filmed, has essentially made them an immortal. And Jack is the film made them, they made their image immortal, so that the way they looked and all that, how they looked back then would live on forever in film stock. However, it also killed them, as movies were a great something which will to stop carnivals from being popular. It was something that killed the carnival industry, the movie industry was. And so it's this massive irony. But Owen Yanto, he's just fascinated by the fact that in this film stock, this 100-year-old film stock, is essentially keeping these people alive, and there's this weird, strange atmosphere about it. And he just talks about the philosophy of old film stock and this passion of restoring and watching just old silent film stock from years ago. That scene is so perfectly written. I might even put it up there as one of my favourite Torchwood scene. It's so beautiful. It's so incapitative of the passion of preserving films from long ago. And as somebody who has a huge interest in this, somebody who looks up all the information about lost films from the 1920s and 30s, somebody who would be jumping in joy tomorrow if it's announced that the Lon Chaney classic London After Midnight film was found tomorrow. I'm one of those people who is passionate about this, so it did kind of hit me here, and I was kind of like Yanto in this scene, because this is how, like, I do have moments where I think like this, where it is kind of mental how these people, you might not know their names, you might not know their personalities, but in a way, thanks to movies and the way they move, the way they're seen here, they're kind of immortalized. Sure, photos can also preserve an image, but with footage, with movement, there's so much that gets captured. A part of your personality gets traced onto the screen, and it's just, that scene is just gold. It's absolutely gold. Yeah, it might even be my favourite Torchwood scene so far. That scene, man, as a film lover, that hit me right there. That hit me right where it needed to be. So they investigate, and they kind of have this connection that the film stock is somehow haunted. They talk to the kid who put in the projector. He talks about these this event that's like, it looks like it was coming up to him, and he also explains how when he watches it, despite it being a silent film, he can hear music, the same kind of music that Jack was hearing in the Torchwood hub, and so it's basically now a race to try and find out what they are and stop them. However, the Torchwood team don't really learn much in terms of who these characters are and who their personalities are. They watch the film stock in the hub, where it's basically seen by everybody that yes, Jack is in the film stock, and Jack basically reminisces that he was in this carnival, and he made a huge group of friends back in the 1920s. But there's also something else as well, as the film stock also shows another carnival crew, someone he didn't realise were real until now, a group known as the Night Travellers, a mysterious group of carnival travellers who seemingly appear overnight, only appear at night, sometimes only when it's raining, and seemingly they are connected to this mystery of kidnapped people who vanish off the face of the earth. Actually, I tell a lie, I just realised. The pre-credit sequence is actually a scene set like years ago where the Night Travellers capture a young girl. I just remembered that, I do apologise. That is a really haunting scene. But yeah, and we get some scenes of the two Night Travellers that have returned into modern day by themselves, and they are just so unbelievably creepy. We don't really get an understanding on what they're doing. They seem to have this benevolent power, this force. They can seemingly teleport, they can appear whenever, and obviously they can capture people. And apparently they can keep souls in this jar, which they use as like this audience that they have. But they don't seem to be absorbing the energy. There's nothing that suggests that they feed off this energy or that they particularly need it. It's just more that they enjoy it. And it's just so, it crawls under your skin when the ghost maker, he's kind of like listening in and he can hear people's screams. And this scene could easily be played over the top and silly, but you have such a great performances by here that it really gets under your skin. I think Julian Bleach was just such a perfect casting here. It's almost stupid how great he is at this. And I like how the relationship between this girl, where it's kind of like, she's like, can we eat them now? Can we let them out now? Can we enjoy their company now? I want to see them. I want to see my ghosts. But the ghost makers is like, no, we can't. We can never let them out. We can never see them. But you can still hear them. Listen, you can still hear their cries, their screams. And the interesting thing about this is that usually in ghost fiction, usually when we have a supernatural element, we never see the story from the sides of just the supernatural entities. Because it always then implies that in some way, shape or form, these creatures exist within the mind, that they exist within our characters' imagination to some degree. But here, Peter J. Hammond does something very unique, in which featuring fictional villains like this on their own, and they get scenes where it's literally just them two discussing and having weird moments. Sometimes not even just one of them. Like there's a scene in which a really, really great scene, which I want to say, the directing in this story also influences just how amazing this story is. The villains basically hide out in this abandoned swimming pool, and there seems to be like a little drain, which the female character, because she seems to be obsessed with water, she kind of like rubs her face in water, and she's kind of this really strange, eerie character. There's a great scene in which she's basically rubbing herself in dirty water, and then you see her like slowly walk out from the empty swimming pool in a long shot that follows her up to this door. And then when she opens the door, we see all the characters that we've previously seen these two take the souls of, just standing there, saying nothing, doing nothing, whilst we know that these characters are in hospital at the moment as the torture team are investigating. There's even a scene in which these two characters basically take over the souls of an entire family, and when the torture team go in to check the new victims, two of them are actually children. The idea that these almost clown, supernatural clown-like entities takes the souls of children is really disturbing, and it's something which is something that you could theoretically do in Doctor Who and even the Sarah Jane Adventures, but here in an adult series where we kind of know that sometimes it doesn't always work out. I mean, in Hammond's previous story, Small Worlds, that episode ended with the torturer to basically have forced him to give up and letting the child go into this supernatural dimension. The good guys don't always win in Torchwood, and I feel like though you can do this story in Doctor Who and you can do this story in Sarah Jane, it works so much better as a Torchwood episode. And there's just this haunting feeling, this haunting emotion. I especially like the scene in which the tortured team, they're watching the film clips in the tortured base, and Yanto notices something incredibly off. He's like looking at it, it's like something is strange, something isn't right. And then he runs into Jack's office. It's like, you've got to come in to see this. This isn't the same film that we watched back at the theatre. Look, there are two people seemingly missing. There's a girl that was in the shot, and there was this guy calling out, and they seem to just vanished. And it turns out that these creatures are just somehow coming out of the screen. Somehow these night travelers are some sort of supernatural entity. Maybe not alien. They are some sort of supernatural phenomenon, and they kind of knew that when the circuits die, they sort of die. So that discussion earlier on about how the films kind of immortalize them takes a whole new meaning, as it turns out that they put themselves, their souls, their very existence in this film, so that they can basically get their revenge many years down the line and try and find a new audience. And what makes this premise so good, what makes this premise so perfect, and it's a few, and it's something which when you listen to it, should be so simple. It's something I think a lot of writers should know. But when you write for a science fiction series like Doctor Who, Torchwood and Sarah Jane, a lot of writers make the mistake of explaining what happens. And this is a great example of the Torchwood never learn what these creatures are, whether they are monsters of the void or these secret godlike entities, the great old ones, or whether they're just some alien race that can somehow project their souls into film stock. They know how to defeat them. Basically, they go in to try and film them again in a way which kind of is really easy. Just filming them and then just burning the film, trapping them in the film and then destroying the film, which kind of, is a very simple way of ending it. But the Torture team never learn what these creatures are. And Jack has no idea. He kind of has this feeling, he kind of has a rough idea of the Night Travelers, but even he is dumbfounded by just exactly what they are. And that makes this story 10,000 times better. It's something that in the revived era of Doctor Who, it does happen a few occasions. A great example is whether the beast in the Impossible Planet and Satan Pist is actually the devil from before time, and the Doctor never really learns about that in that episode. And when it happens, it is always great. I love this kind of concept. I love this idea, and it really works in this story in helping gaining its atmosphere. We also get a really haunting scene in which basically the Night Travelers are planning on getting the band back together, essentially trying to get the rest of the film stock so they can free the full gang and use them to basically help them with their plans. And so they go back to the kids' apartment, and we get this really strange scene where he goes into his house and sees that his bath is overfilling and that there's this girl inside of it, and he thinks that she is drowned, but then she gets up and he starts running away, and he calls up Jack. Jack goes into his flat and finds nothing there, find that they've stolen the film stock, and they head back to the theatre to essentially release their comrades. Jack then comes up with the idea of filming them and burning it, something which is very simple, very easy, something that it's so easy just to defeat them. And he gets most of them, basically all except for the Ghost Maker, to which he basically plans to either absorb or release all of his last breaths that he's contained in this container. It's also established that if the person isn't around when the thing is opened, then they can lose their souls forever and just die in their place. And we get a scene which I will admit is easily the weakest scene in this story, which is really sad because it is a vital scene, which is essentially the finale, in which the final battle, as the Ghostmaker runs up the stairs and he kind of throws the Flanagan, this metal container, as Jack gets films him and then rips out the film stock, putting it in the sun and burning, essentially erasing all of these characters out from existence. However, the canister is let out open and voices, the last breaths come out. As Yanto gets it, he puts his thumb over it and he can hear only one voice. They only saved one soul, as everybody else that they have captured throughout the story has just been killed. And it turns out that the last voice is the boy of the family that the Travellers took in that one scene. So essentially they just saved the boy, but they couldn't save his sister and they couldn't save his parents, leaving his child basically. They've saved him, but he's an orphan now, and you can kind of see in Gareth David Lloyd's his performance that this has really, really tormented him. It's something which I don't think might have been in the text, but his performance really shows that he is torn by the fact that this haunting environment has put them in a way where only one person was left alive after their encounter with them, and they have basically Jack has just to save one person. That's all that they could do. That's the only thing they could do. This preservation of this film killed almost everybody except for this one person, and that's mental. Now, something later on for future vlogs. Remember that child, the actor who plays that child. That's going to become important later on in the series of vlogs that I'm doing. But anyway, the story then kind of ends on a cliffhanger in which Jack basically is like, we haven't really defeated them. There could be other film stocks out there with the Night Travelers. If any of those film stocks gets found and they get projected, then that's it. They're out again, and we'll just have to stop them if that ever happens. As we cut into a scene in which this man is at a car boot sale, and he has a container, and this boy, he's carrying the container, he drops it, and the film stock kind of reels out as Jack in the Torchwood base is putting the Flanagan, the metal container away, and he can still hear that music playing, essentially saying that they haven't defeated the monster, they've only temporarily stopped it, which is a really great way of ending this story. And there you go, that is from Out of the Rain. There's other stuff that's in here which I didn't talk about, like Jack and Yanto going to meet this old woman for some information, and there's a lot of other details, but there's just so much to like about this story. The atmosphere is immense, and if you are a fan of like classic horror films and this eerie supernatural quality to your fiction, I highly recommend this. I had a lot of blast of this. It might be one of my favourite Torchwood episodes. It's just a great fun, and I'm so glad that Peter J. Hammond got to redeem himself. I think this is his final story for the series, for any Whoniverse story, and what a way to end it. This guy, he started off with an unproduced story. He then continued on to make a very weak entry into the Doctor Who's first successful spin-off. And then he finishes off with basically going, you know what, here's one of the best stories that you will ever see for this series. Have that. And and also as well, the director, I can't remember the name, Jonathan Fox Bennett, his directing in this is absolutely phenomenal. There's some really, really great shots here, and the emotions are highly intense. The villains are great. They have this eerie, almost cartoonish thing about them, but it's played just enough where they are genuinely creepy. Think of the performances like Heath Ledger's Joker, in a sense. It has that same quality about it. But I really enjoyed this story. I really enjoyed this episode. Highly recommended from me. So, there you go. That is Torchwood from Out of the Rain. So join me next time when Sarah Jane and her crew go and investigate a church, as there seems to be people being haunted by a ghostly figure, a ghostly nun. So I'll see you next time for The Eye of the Gorgon. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!